Bibliophiles of the internet. My name is Adriana and today I'm here to bring you a belated collective book haul. For reasons I will never understand, somehow I'm very behind on book hauls, and that's a slightly terrifying place to be, so I thought I would combine March and April together to bring you a kind of collective haul. But with that said, that means there's a ton of books I have to get through today, so let's just get into it. Just to refresh you on my mindset in March, that was when I had just finished A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, and I desperately wanted to find more books like that. Which led me to The Interestines by Meg Wolitzer. This is literary fiction, and what drew me to this story was the fact that you get to stay with the characters for a very long time. I think they meet in college, and then they kind of stay friends or sustain some kind of a relationship through their late adulthood, perhaps even later, so you get to follow them for decades and decades, and that was one of my favorite elements of A Little Life, so I'm hoping this story delivers in that way as well. Other than that, I really know nothing about the story besides the fact that this co-ed group of friends has mostly studied the arts and humanities in college, and we'll see how that serves them in adulthood, which may be a little bit too real for me. Then I have The People in the Trees by Hanya Yanagihara. From what I understand, this story is about a doctor who travels to the Micronesian islands, and he finds this rare tribe of people who have somehow discovered immortality, but the problem is it preserves the body and not the mind. Either way, he learns about this method, takes it back to the US, and uses it to make a name for himself with disastrous results. I loved A Little Life and I was completely captivated by Hanya Yanagihara's writing style, so honestly I'm not even really concerned with the content of this book. I just love that it's written by her, and I hope she works her magic on me again, and I really hope I like this book too. Also in March, I read The 100,000 Kingdoms by N.K. Jemisin, which is the first book in her Inheritance trilogy, and I loved it, so of course I had to immediately buy the sequel, The Broken Kingdoms, also by N.K. Jemisin. What's really cool about this trilogy is that it's a trilogy of companion novels, so this will not follow the same protagonist as the first book, but a different character, but it will continue on in the sequence of events. This book is about a character named Ori Shoth, who is a blind artist, and she takes in this strange homeless man out of the kindness of her heart. Then she learns that someone in the city is murdering godlings, and she's realizing that perhaps her guest is at the heart of it. And if you've read the first book, you can guess who the homeless man is, and for that reason, I'm very excited to read this book. Then I had to get even more N.K. Jemisin because she is queen, so I got The Killing Moon, which is the first in her Dream Blood duology. I really don't know too much about this story besides the fact that one of my best friends, Ivan from Sona Azra, read this book at the beginning of the year, I think, and he really loved it, and it destroyed him completely. And knowing N.K. Jemisin's writing, I'm not surprised, and I also want to be destroyed, so that's why I got this book. I know there's this order of people called gatherers, and their job is to harvest dreaming magic or sleeping magic, and they use it to heal people, but they also use it to kill people who are corrupt. The main character, Ehiru, also learns that there's someone misusing this magic to kill people or to invade the realm of dreams, so that's another thing he has to figure out. And I'm also pretty sure that this duology is inspired by Egyptian mythology, so I'm just excited to read it. Then I got Half a War by Joe Abercrombie. This is the third and final book in the Shattered Sea trilogy, which is another fantasy trilogy of companion novels. It's not like my favorite thing in the world, I'm not a diehard for it, but it's a pretty solid trilogy across the board, and I have read the first two books, and I'm a completionist, so I need to finish the trilogy either way, and that was the logic behind this. The last book I got myself in March was My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. This is the first in a literary fiction series, I think, called the Neapolitan novels. I'm sure you've heard of them, and it's also translated from Italian, which I think is really cool. This story is set in 1950s Italy with these two friends who are growing up in a poor neighborhood in Naples, and it sort of follows their evolving, complex relationship throughout their lives. So again, it just sounds right up my alley. I've heard amazing reviews about this entire series, so that's why I picked it up. Also in March, I got some very belated Christmas gifts from my friend Joanna from Joanna Souza. I did do an unboxing video for these books, which I will link down below, but because I talked about them a lot in that video, I won't talk about them again in this one, but I will show them to you. The first one is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. Also The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton. And finally, All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. So that was everything for March. Now let's move on to the April books. The first thing I got in April was The Haters by Jessie Andrews. Jessie Andrews is the author of Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, which I freaking love, in case you don't know that, and he's finally written a second book, so I knew I had to get it. This is a comedic YA contemporary story about two friends who are at jazz camp for the summer, but they really don't like it, so they kind of end up forming their own makeshift band on the fly, and they run away so that they can tour their band across the country. So it just sounds like a crazy story full of hilarious hijinks. Jessie Andrews has a killer sense of humor, and his voice is so distinctive and refreshing. Plus, this book is about musicians. Like, sign me the hell up. Then I bought the Japanese edition of Captive Prince by C.S. Pacat. I really don't have any explanation for this besides the fact that I'm Captive Prince trash and I love the trilogy so much. And also, have you seen this art? Because it's really nice. Feast your eyes on some close-up shots of all of this awesome artwork. There are so many fantastic illustrations throughout, and as a fan, it just really satisfies my Captive Prince loving heart. And of course, I'm going to buy all of the books in the trilogy in these editions as well, because I can. Then I have a book I didn't actually buy in April, and that is How to Live Safely in a Science Fictional Universe by Charles Yu. I talked about this book at length in my March wrap-up. I loved it so much. It's far and away one of the best books I've read in 2016, and I cannot say enough good things about it. I very, very highly recommend it. So if I didn't actually buy this book in April, what the heck is it doing in this video? Well, in April, I went to a Charles Yu event that was hosted at my school, and I got to hear him read from all of his books and answer some questions in a Q&A, and then I got to meet him and he signed my book. So he signed it on the title page and it says, "For Adriana, make your own universe and make it better. Charles Yu." Not gonna lie, I'm still dying and still fangirling to this day. Charles Yu is amazing, and I can't believe I got to meet him and see him in person. It was just one of the most gratifying, awesome days of my life. So after going to this event and hearing Charles Yu read from all of his work, that just solidified the fact that I absolutely want to read everything this man has ever written, and he has a ton of collections of short stories out there. So I immediately went out and got Sorry Please Thank You by Charles Yu. As I said, this is a collection of short stories. All I know is that Charles Yu likes to dabble in sci-fi and speculative fiction, but the subjects of all of his work seem to be these ordinary, plain, mundane people, which I think is a really interesting juxtaposition. And he also has this incredible sense of humor that just won't quit. So I hope all of those elements come into play in this collection. Then I started watching the anime number 6, so I figured I'd get the first volume of the manga as well, and this is by Atsuko Asano and Hinoki Kino. This is sci-fi and queer lit. The main character Shion lives in this utopic metropolis called Number 6, which seems to be perfect in every way, but then people start dying mysteriously, and also Shion becomes associated with this wanted criminal, so he ends up going on the run, and he and Nezumi are trying to figure out what's happening in Number 6. I said this in my April wrap-up, but I think this may be a case where I enjoy the anime more than the manga. I have heard from a lot of people that the light novels are really, really good as well, so I think I may try to look up some translations of those online because I do really like the story overall. Then I have kind of an impulse buy, and that is We Were Here by Matt de la Peña. I care very deeply about stories that are centered around Hispanic characters as written by Hispanic authors because, hey yo, that's my entire life, that's my entire experience, and that's what this is. This story is about a kid named Miguel who is sentenced to juvie, and I think afterwards he's also sentenced to stay in a group home for a year and keep a journal of his experiences and his feelings. There he meets a couple of guys, I think, and together they try to make a run for it and try to cross the border into Mexico, but I don't think they make it very far, and eventually Miguel has to face the things that he's running from. Again, this was kind of an impulse buy because I just randomly one day started to read the first few chapters of this book, and they were so well written and I connected with them immediately right off the bat, so I just had the strong urge to go out and buy this book. Penultimately, I have Saints Astray by Jacqueline Carey. This is the sequel to Santa Olivia, which I read in April, and I loved it so much that I was only like halfway through the first book when I got this one from Book Outlet. I always sum it up this way, but basically Santa Olivia is about a non-white lesbian werewolf superhero. Plus there's a strong boxing element as well, so it's basically everything I've ever wanted in life. Saints Astray basically picks up where Santa Olivia left off. I am a little bit wary though because I know a lot of people rate this book much lower than the first book, and I'm scared that it won't live up to how awesome Santa Olivia was, so I'm kind of putting it off a little bit. And finally, the last book I have to show you is More Happy Than Not by Adam Silvera. This is queer lit. It's a mixture of speculative fiction and YA contemporary. It's about a boy named Aaron Soto who is Hispanic and born and raised in the Bronx, and his father recently committed suicide, so his family is struggling to figure out how they can move on from that. The thing about this reality is that there's this kind of procedure that allows you to suppress traumatizing or damaging memories, and Aaron is struggling with whether he should get that procedure done or not. Plus, Aaron is also discovering his identity and realizing that he's very much attracted to men, but he's really scared to admit that because of how and where he grew up. I read this book in May, so you will hear me talk about this book more in my May wrap-up. So those were all the books I got in March and April. There were so many of them. If you have heard of any of them, read any of them, or you would like to read them in the future, please let me know your thoughts on any of these books in the comments down below. But that is everything I had for this book haul today. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I will catch you on the flip side of the page. Bye!